Here's an observation, folks. This tomato here, as you can see, early days was a little bit yellow at the bottom. Have a look at that. See the yellow leaves? Now, we did liquid feed these only once, as opposed to the other ones. Well, not as opposed to the others. They're actually still really green, but they're all in the same garden bed and they're all growing in the same medium. But this one here, for some reason, decided to yellow off right in the early days. It may have been a little bit too wet for it when it went in, or maybe a little bit disturbed in the root zone because we separated it from a punnet. But nevertheless, it's kicked into gear now. You can see all the nice dark green foliage there that's coming through. So it is greening up, and I'm happy about that sign because we've also got some new shoots down the side here, which we're going to go through shortly and discuss on how to maintain a tomato. Because if you let them go, they'll turn into a big shrub and they'll sort of trail across the sides here. You can climb them up, which is what I'm going to do, but if you don't tie them up, they will cascade everywhere and take over. So semi-vined, they're not a climber like a jasmine, but very much so a climber in its own right. Now, we've got our stakes in already, and we've done that early enough because we haven't disturbed the root zone, and that's the main reason for it. But a couple of things to look out for because of this bloody weather. Hot, cold, very humid today. Overcast. I can't stare at the sun because it's so bloody bright, and then we get the rains again, and then it plummets down to about 14 degrees during the daytime and sometimes really colder at night. So last night was a warm night. We had about 14 degrees overnight and we had plenty of moon, so almost a full moon, which means we had that extended sunlight hour or light hours on our plants, which means more growth. This is September. I think it was a September class, the first class the first week in September we did the class. So we're about 5 weeks into it now since we planted this bed. And they're only tiny seedlings. Look at the eggplants, look at the lettuce. Everything is just thriving, except for a couple of yellow leaves on the tomatoes, as we mentioned earlier. That's the main thing that's happened so far. But the other one to look out for, as I started explaining, the adverse weather changes that we're experiencing have an effect on the tomatoes, especially. The humidity can knock them about. They can tolerate it, but sometimes those spores of those rust and septoria leaf spot, which are little round dots. So you'll probably see that on your tomato plants, unfortunately. For those who've got that problem, you need to remove them immediately because it can easily spread from one leaf to the other and from one plant to the other. And we're talking about spots like that. That looks like more weather damage, but at the end of the day, it's very similar to septoria leaf spot. We have to remove these leaves, and I want to show you something else that's going on here. Now I'm going to use the chikamasa, if I pronounce it correctly. These are the Japanese snips or pruners. Very, very sharp and an excellent tool for pruning small plants like this. So they're very delicate in their attempt to prune, unlike the secateurs can be a little bit more robust and damaging. And today is the perfect day to be pruning because it's nice and hot, and as I said, the sap flow will help heal the cuts that we make, obviously on the plant. This is what you've got to look out for. Now, I haven't got my glasses on, but that almost looks like a black streak mark, which is almost caused initially by water, and it's the collapse of the cell walls. It can be caused from a number of reasons, but at the end of the day, if you start to spot this along your the stems of your plants, you need to remove them. You can't leave it on the plant, and it will cause the plant eventually to go backwards and just give up. So we're going to clean these plants up, looking out for plants with markings on the leaves like that, and also removing the laterals, because we'll find it's going to multiply from the sides and bush out a lot. Now look at this, just get these broad beans out of the way. That's from the mulch, by the way, I didn't plant them. We've got one shoot down here, we've got another shoot just down there. So there's 1, 2, if I go around, there's 3 on that side, another one down there, 4. Now if you come up a little bit, 5, there's one on there, 6, another one here, 7. 7 shoots. Imagine leaving all those to grow. It's going to turn into a big shrub. So what we've got to do is pick 2, well technically what I'm going to leave is 3. I like to leave 3 shoots going up. I know a lot of you do just 2. I like to work with 3. Just gives me that one extra in case one of them goes backwards. And history shows that sometimes they do more often than not. So we're going to remove, that looks like a strong one on this side. Let's pick the strongest one. So this one down here is really rigid. And that one there's not too bad. That one there as well. So we can go 1, 2 down there. And look, at the end of the day, if it doesn't take off, out of those 2, if one of them doesn't take off, you can always guarantee your tomato plant will give you another shoot like that going upwards. Now, no, the fruit do not come from these side laterals that are growing, folks. That's not where the fruit will come from. It'll actually develop along the stem and cascade over like a little tassel. So it's not on this shoot that's coming up, but rather just above it and below the next leaf node. So we've got one down here, one up there, and you'll find eventually they'll start to develop. At the moment, we've got this central one that's going on, developing here, which we took the main head off, and I think I'm gonna have to remove all these. These are very insignificant, so they're gonna come off. I don't like those flowers. They're not gonna produce anything for me. So chances are that this middle shoot here, both leaves are going to stop growing. See how it's got a fork in it? As a plant gets bigger, this plant is showing signs of fasciation, which means it's the widening of the stem. It almost looks like multiple stems all fused together and growing as one big one. Now, that could be caused from a range of factors, multiple factors, let's say. It can be weather caused, it can be soil as well, and it could also be the tomato's just gone through a bit of stress in its early days. Again, these were all punnets, so when you do grow seedlings, ideally grow them in single cells on their own, so they have their own space of soil, so they can establish a root system, and when you take them out, you're not pulling them apart or cutting into those existing roots, causing the plant to go through a little bit of stress and backwards. So fasciation occurs on many types of plants, not just tomatoes. And look, and the plant will still continue to grow strong and healthy. It just looks unusual and quite fascinating, in fact, and will still produce a decent crop. So these are not big malakas. These are Adelaide tomatoes, Rouge de Marmande, that I've got in here. So I've kept these together along with the rest of them. So I'm not going to have them sitting with my big malakas, which are still coming on in the hothouse. So what we're going to do is finish this off. So I've left two, one, two, and we'll take the third one out as well. And you can pinch them out with your fingers, but make sure your hands are clean. And it looks quite stark at the moment, doesn't it? And that's okay, because as the plant grows, it's going to get taller because I've taken a lot of shoots off. So I don't want the width in this. I want more height, and I want it to be able to, you know, produce half a decent crop on it. And I don't expect to get hundreds of tomatoes off the one plant. Look, the more shoots I leave, the more likelihood I'll get tomatoes or more tomatoes on them. Maybe not as large as they would be if I thin it out, or as I thin it out like I do here. But I prefer it that way. For those who like to grow them bushy, you still need to thin out a little bit because not enough sunlight and airflow. It's just going to be a perfect home for disease and insects to come in there and have a good time on your plants. So I have stripped that. Expect these ones here to take off. Now I'm going to try and tie these onto the single stake as opposed to having the string hanging down from the top. Now with this one here, look how bushy it is. And always sterilize your tools before you go from one plant to the other. Now, we've got the central leader, we've got a good sucker coming out the bottom here which will want to take off like a water shoot, but I do want to remove these bottom leaves, and I will remove, if you can see what I'm doing, the bottom shoots. I'm cutting that off completely. Gone. One of them. Don't mind the mushrooms, aren't they fantastic? I'm going to take this yellow leaf off down here as well as this shoot. So that's a little one there. We've got another one up here. I'm actually going to keep this one up here this time. So I'm going to go down low and a little bit higher, cut like that, and then remove on the other side as well. And yeah, and this bottom leaf as well. Now, off camera, I'd be pinching these off with my fingernails, but I'm trying to show you how to practice good gardening. And that's using clean secateurs and a little mushroom at the bottom. I'll leave these leaves for now, because the plant's really healthy, it's really kicking on. We've taken off the central one as well. Have a look at this one instead. See, the first one we looked at wasn't growing. We cut off the big, the big flower that we had on top, the terminate flower. That's gone, but this one's already kicked on 2 new shoots. One there, one there. I may actually take off all the bottom leaves and just allow these 2 shoots to take off for me. Maybe a third one as well. Every plant will be slightly different. You can try and train them identically to each other. But being a vine as it is, it'll grow in all sorts of directions, and obviously its position to where the sun is, it'll always change compared to the ones next to it. And the one you're looking at now, have a look at this. Oh, this monster. You know what? I'm going to leave that one. We're going to do a trial and see what happens with this cluster of flowers here. All in the same bed. I've basically removed all the bottom leaves on the other ones and shoots. I'm just going to take this leaf off here because I see it a little bit damaged, and that one down there as well. So just getting rid of that. Leave this cluster of flowers and let's see how they grow, eh? Now, if you've got tomatoes in your garden, a little bit discolouring, a little bit off, You can liquid feed them. I don't need to liquid feed this. I use a Eco Butch and Liquid Gold on them. Only once so far, but the soil's so well inoculated because the mulch itself was soaked in Eco Butch and Liquid Gold in a wheelbarrow. And you can see how nice and matted down it is. It is quite firm. I'm not going to try and pull it apart, dislodge it like the bloody birds do, but instead I'm going to leave it there. You know what? Let me just show you underneath it a little bit. This is the other thing I noticed while we go in there. Have a look at this. This side here is facing north, so this is north facing. So the sun is relatively high, but I get that it doesn't give as much sun along this edge as it does along that edge there. So even though it's only 1 square metre of garden bed, because it's sunken and well protected, and I did that purposely because we get the high winds here, looking after these plants. Look how healthy the lettuce are, and the capsicum's taken off as well. But look at this, the eggplant on this side has basically quadrupled compared to this little eggplant on that side. Okay, and I think we haven't watered this. I have to water all the other garden beds, but this one here we haven't watered for a while. Look, it is matted beautifully. I don't want to disturb it too much. Look at the life. You can see all the little critters walking around there. See them in there? I can see them. I hope you can. There's one somewhere just hiding there. They go. Just see there, the little ones. Let me just dig up a little bit and see what's going on underneath. It's difficult when you've got a big boulder camera in your face. No worms yet, which is okay. We don't expect to see worms. It'll be nice to see some eventually, but at the moment, that's fine. It's just decomposing beautifully. And this eggplant just needs that little bit more time, eh? It's a seedling that's not getting... you can have the best soil in the world, and it's just positioning can make a huge difference to your plant's health overall. I wasn't making a claim there being having the best soil, but I have to tell you, it's up there with the best. What we have, that planting mix. But again, moisture, positioning, a huge factor as to how well your plants grow. So really think about what you're doing with your plants. If you're in courtyards and you've got them on pots, get some wheels for them, move them around the garden, chase the sun if you need to, and get them out of the sun if you need to, if it gets too hot. Because it is a lot harsher, the sun at the moment. I've been out there, and look, I've been outside all my life, and don't say I'm getting too old for it, guys, because I'll just bark at you. No, the sun is a lot hotter, a lot harsher, and the change in weather fluctuations is a lot more frequent. So plants are going to struggle. We're not going to have 100% success rate every time unless we have controlled environments and we drip feed these with all sorts of chemicals and fertilizers to keep them alive, which, you know, the big farming industry does. We want to have a little courtyard garden, a little raised planter like this. Doesn't have to be this high. 15, 20 plants in here, harvest one, plant another one, and enjoy it, but keep it all clean. If you're in South Australia, we're going to be there this weekend, folks. Put it in your diary. Come and say hello to us. Davarin Park is also open down there. So there's 2 locations, Thebarton and Davarin Park. You can order online or walk in and shop in store as well on the weekend. Enjoy your day. Have a wonderful week. And I'll see you on the weekend if you're in South Australia. And for everybody else, 30 to 60% off online on everything we have for you. Vasili'sGarden.com. From me, Vasili, Maresi.